Let's be real, when you think of pop culture icons who embody vengeance, your mind immediately jumps to names like the Punisher, Ghost Rider, and even Batman in his darkest moments. They're all characters driven by trauma, by a loss that redefined their entire existence. But there's one character who takes the concept of revenge to a whole other level, a plane that goes way beyond a simple quest for justice. A specter who doesn't just seek vengeance but is vengeance incarnate, in a way that borders on the absurd and the macabre. I'm talking, of course, about Scorpion, the hellspawn ninja from Mortal Kombat. And this, my friends, is where the conversation gets real, because we're not just talking about some pissed-off guy. We're talking about a force forged in the very fires of hell. No exaggeration, Scorpion's anatomy isn't just about muscle and bone. It's about the underworld, the soul, manipulation, and the very defiance of the laws of life and death. He's a walking anomaly that defies logic, and his presence is a stark reminder that hatred can be powerful enough to tear the veil between realms. The question that keeps nagging at every fan of the saga is, who is Scorpion, for real? Is he a tragic hero? A Hanzo Hasashi broken by pain, fighting for a twisted sense of justice? Or is he just a damned spirit, a weapon of eternal destruction who found fuel in suffering to spread chaos? The answer isn't simple, and that's precisely what makes him so damn compelling. So, brace yourself, because we're about to break down every single aspect of this ninja, from his body, scorched and rebuilt by the Netherrealm, to his mind, utterly fragmented by years of pain and manipulation. To understand the firestorm of fury that is Scorpion, we first need to know the man who existed before it, Hanzo Hasashi. He wasn't a demon, nor a specter. He was a man, one of the most lethal and respected ninjas of the Shirai Ryu clan, a Japanese ninja clan whose rivalry with the Lin Kuei was ancient and bloody. But Hanzo wasn't just an assassin. He was a family man, with a wife and son, living a life that, while dangerous, was guided by a code of honor. He had a home, he had love, he had a future. That piece is what made his fall so devastating. It was ripped away from him in the most brutal and cowardly way imaginable. The massacre of his clan and his family, orchestrated by the sorcerer Quan Chi, was the spark that ignited hell. Quan Chi's plan was diabolical. He wanted an undead champion to fight for him, and he knew the only way to create a monster that powerful was through unimaginable suffering. To do this, Quan Chi used his magic to pin the blame for the massacre on the rival Lin Kuei clan, and specifically on Baihan, the original Sub-Zero. Hanzo, in his final moments, died believing this lie, with the name Sub-Zero seared into his mind as the one responsible for his pain. Hanzo's death wasn't the end. In fact, it was the beginning of something far worse. His soul, heavy with hatred and a thirst for revenge, went straight to the Netherrealm, the hell of the Mortal Kombat universe. There, amidst the suffering and agony, he was approached by Quan Chi, who presented himself as a benefactor and offered Hanzo what he desired most, a chance at revenge. In exchange for his services as the Netherrealm's champion, Hanzo would be reborn. Consumed by pain and blinded by the desire to make Sub-Zero pay, Hanzo truly died, and from the ashes Scorpion was born, no longer a man but a specter, a creature of pure vengeance resurrected with a single purpose. This manipulation was the engine of the legendary rivalry between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, a conflict that became the backbone of Mortal Kombat, spanning generations, tournaments, and even timelines. Quan Chi kept Scorpion on an invisible leash, a vicious cycle of hatred, using him as his personal weapon. But the truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds a way out. When Hanzo finally discovers that the true architect of his misery was Quan Chi himself, his world collapses. The revelation that he had served his greatest enemy for years redirects his vengeance and begins a long, painful path to redemption. Throughout the franchise, we see Scorpion evolve, from a specter blinded by rage to a reluctant guardian, a mentor, and finally, a leader determined to rebuild the Shirai Ryu clan from the ashes, honoring not vengeance but the memory of his family. To get a handle on Scorpion's anatomy, you have to toss out the human biology textbook, because what makes up Scorpion is way more complex. We're talking about a bizarre and fascinating fusion of organic matter and pure hellish energy. His body wasn't just brought back to life, it was deconstructed and remade. Imagine the pain of having every cell in your body consumed by fire and, in the vacuum of death, being yanked back. But you don't come back as you were. You come back as an aberration, a shell rebuilt by the dark forces of the Netherrealm. His bones, once human, are now infused with the essence of that place. They're denser, reinforced by a dark magic that allows them to withstand impacts that would pulverize a normal skeleton. The flesh, when you can see it under the suit, is a nightmarish landscape, a permanently scorched husk, a roadmap of scars that tell the story of the betrayal that forged him. This isn't normal physical resistance, it's supernatural durability, a refusal to fall apart. He doesn't feel pain the way we do. For Scorpion, existence itself is a constant, throbbing ache. He took that agony and turned it into fuel. The Netherrealm's fire, the hellfire, isn't something he just controls. It's a part of him, running through his veins instead of blood. He is, in essence, a walking conduit of hell in humanoid form. Every punch, every burst of flame, is like he's ripping open a fissure to the Netherrealm and letting a piece of that horror leak into the world. Macabre? You bet. But it's this unholy connection that sustains his power and his existence. He's no longer just Hanzo Hasashi. He's an entity forged in pain, a living or undead reminder that some souls simply refuse to rest in peace. When we talk about his powers, things escalate to a cosmic level. His teleportation isn't a speed trick, it's a distortion of the fabric of reality. He literally tears through space, dips into the Netherrealm for a split second, and re-emerges somewhere else. Picture the scene. In the blink of an eye, Scorpion vanishes in a blast of fire and brimstone, and the next instant, he's right behind you. The hellfire he conjures isn't ordinary flame. It's not the kind of fire you put out with water. It's the pure energy of the Netherrealm, a manifestation of his rage that burns not just the body, but the very essence of whoever it hits. And of course, we have to talk about the iconic spear, the kunai attached to a chain, always accompanied by the battle cry that echoes through video game history. Get over here! This weapon isn't just a stylish tool, it's an extension of his will and a symbol of his relentless pursuit. That chain doesn't just serve to pull his opponent, it symbolizes how he's chained to his own revenge. And every one of these powers was born from a dark pact with Quan Chi, making them both his greatest weapon and his greatest curse. Scorpion is the perfect fusion of elite martial arts with profane occultism, of personal tragedy with supernatural horror. He's proof that power and curse are two sides of the same blood-soaked coin. Now, if we dive into Scorpion's mind, what we find is a psychological battlefield. It's walking chaos, a constant civil war waged within a single being. Scorpion's psyche is the collision of two conflicting identities. On one side, the memory of Hanzo Hasashi, the man of honor, the father, the loyal warrior. On the other, the specter, the entity born of hatred, driven by an insatiable bloodlust and shaped by years of manipulation. The obsession with revenge isn't just a motivation for him, it's a disease, an addiction that corrupts every thought. Each brutal blow is almost an internal scream, a desperate attempt to fill the void left by the loss of his family. It's a form of self-medication through violence, but the pain never goes away. However, what keeps Scorpion from being a one-dimensional monster are the moments when Hanzo's consciousness breaks through the surface. These are flashes of lucidity, where he questions his own path of destruction, and that's where the character gains his tragic depth. He stops being just a blind avenger and becomes someone fighting to rebuild what's left of his humanity. The turning point comes when he discovers the truth about Quan Chi. The revelation that his revenge was directed at the wrong target causes Scorpion's entire mental structure to collapse. But, paradoxically, it's in this collapse that he finds a new foundation. The rage, once blind, now has a clear direction. Vengeance transforms into justice. Pain turns into reconstruction. And this journey of self-discovery, of a monster trying to remember how to be a man, is what makes Scorpion so much more complex than just the fire ninja. When it comes to his accomplishments, Scorpion has a resume that is, to say the least, brutal and legendary. In the original timeline, during the first Mortal Kombat tournament, Hanzo confronts Bi-Han, the first Sub-Zero, consumed by Quan Chi's lie. Scorpion's fury is overwhelming. In the end, he rips off his opponent's mask and, without hesitation, executes him with his hellfire, burning him alive. This act was so charged with hatred and negative energy that Bi-Han's soul was corrupted, later being reborn as the dark specter Noob Saibot, a being of pure evil. In other words, Scorpion's revenge created another monster. In Mortal Kombat X, after finally being freed from manipulation, Scorpion corners Quan Chi. Ignoring the pleas of the other heroes who needed the sorcerer alive, He drives his infernal kunai through Quan Chi's chest and decapitates him without a second thought, personally ending years of deception and suffering. And perhaps one of his most symbolic feats, he becomes an ally of Kuai Liang, the second Sub-Zero and Bihan's brother. After discovering the truth, Scorpion seeks peace and asks for forgiveness. Their alliance ends decades of a bloody rivalry between the Shirai Ryu and Lin Kuei clans. This is no small thing. It's breaking a cycle of hatred that seemed eternal. In Mortal Kombat 11, fate pits him against a younger version of himself, one consumed by hatred. He literally faces his own ghost and fights to prevent the senseless cycle of revenge from continuing. Few characters have the guts to face themselves so literally. Scorpion has killed, died, been resurrected, changed destinies, and come back from hell more than once. He's not just a skilled fighter, he's an unstoppable force within the franchise. At the end of the day, Scorpion's tragic origin, brutal death, and infernal resurrection are the beating heart of his entire saga. He embodies the question that haunts many of us. How far would you go for revenge? And what's left of you after it's done? Scorpion's journey forces us to reflect. Is he a warning about how hatred can consume everything we are, turning us into monsters worse than the ones we hunt? Or is he proof that, even after the greatest and most unimaginable loss possible, even after becoming a demon, there's still a path back to redemption? This duality, this constant struggle between the man and the monster, between honor and hatred, is what makes the character immortal within the Mortal Kombat universe and in pop culture as a whole. He's more than a ninja with a spear. He's an archetype of pain and the possibility of overcoming it. And so, we wrap up this deep dive into the anatomy of Scorpion. A journey that took us from the family man Hanzo Hasashi to the vengeful specter of the Netherrealm, through a body burned and remade by dark magic, a mind tormented by the duality of vengeance and honor, and a list of brutal accomplishments that forever changed the timelines of Mortal Kombat. Scorpion teaches us that revenge can give you a purpose, but it's the pursuit of justice and inner peace that, in the end, gives you back your humanity. If you felt the weight of this analysis, drop your opinion in the comments, like, share, and follow for more content on this level. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep having fun, and if you hear a "get over here" in the middle of the night, run, I'm out.